16th of December 1944, Hitler had unleashed Operation Watch the Rhine, a huge attack throughout the snow-covered Ardennes forests, on the German border with Belgium and Luxembourg. The massive attack fell on very weakly held sections of the American front line, came to a shock to the Allies, who thought the Germans lacked the capabilities to launch any more offensives so late in the war. The aim to Hitler's offensives was to cross the Meurthe River and capture the Allied supply port of Antwerp, cutting the American and British armies off from each other and their supply base. But things did not go as quite as planned. American resistance were much tougher than expected, caused the holdup of German timelines of the Allied began to rush reinforcements into the area containing and will crush the German Bulge line. As the German offensive slowed, Hitler's ordered another smaller-scale invasion throughout the south, codenamed Operation Norfolk or North Wind. The goal is attack the breakthrough lines of the U.S. 7th Army, the French First Army, the upper verge of the mountains of the Australian plain, and the search and destroy of the city Stolberg by January 1945. The North Wind would be taken under pressure of the Ardennes section and the forcing of Allied redeployment troops, faraway regimes, and planned for the stages of the sanitation of the dentist that would strike to the rear of General Patton's Third Army. It was menacing, and the southern flank of the Ardennes forests. Northern was launched on the New Year's Eve of 1944 by the German Army G against the very held 60-mile-long sector of the U.S. front line, against the strength of units of the 7th Army. The fighting was again fierce, but the 15th of January, 17 under-strength German divisions were fully engaged, and some battle was the toughest ever fought between U.S. and German soldiers. The Germans had made gains in appalling weather conditions, and the Germans and Americans have slaughtered in towns. Some of the hardest fighting was at the town of Hexling. On the 16th of January 1945, the U.S. forces began trying to reduce the German bulge around the town. Of the U.S. 12th Armored Division sent the task force, of which one of the base was 43 Tank Battalion. This task force was advancing on the Harris-Heim of the open field that was hit from the 8 dug-in German anti-tank guns, assaulted guns, and attack faltered, with heavy losses, and the other 2 task forces were also repulsed by German small arms mortar fire. The next day, on 12th Armored Division tried again, and the U.S. 17th Armored Infantry Battalion had got into a hairless helm that fought standstill of the ever-growing numbers of Germans from the 1503rd Fox Renegade Division outnumbered them severely, 1,000 troops. By the stage of 43rd Battalion tank, 29 Sherman tanks are remaining on the engineer cast of the infantry that attempted to support the advance of the 17th Armored Battalion, but the heavy confusion and the combat had made no contact with the German Panzerfaust very effective. In picking off the American tanks, heavy German reinforcements also that make their way. Of the cunning morning of Jan 17, the SS Sturmbannwerk of the Panzer Battalion from the 10th SS Panzer Division, Fonk of the nearby town of Ludendorff, the hairless helm of the reaching town of the U.S. Shermans and the anti-tank guns, managed to knock out 4 Panthers and to damage several more in the foggy conditions. The tech had turned that around, and the Ludendorff Battalion had to adjust it for the SS Panzergreif Division, who had taken over the 3rd Company of the commander that has been wounded in the fighting. Bevertown decided to recognize her of the outskirts of the Hermann Black Role of all the motorcycles of sidecars combinations. His driver drove him towards them. When they reached the road conjunction, they were stopped and dismounted, moving on foot. Bachman went alone along the road, right covering 50 meters of bend, and reaching the American machine gun fire opened up. The nasty retreat of Paxman had ran, and now the motorcycle and anti-panther launcher which just led on the side of the road, the renacing of several German tanks, and the suffering had now ordered his driver to get back into German lines and bring up the platoon of Panther tanks. Two Panther under command of SS Abednego at the edge of town of the Bachmann of one of his most missions. Inside the edge, the way to the town, armed with Panzerfaust. He had a good view of the main street. Two of the Shermans were sat in the street, carefully take aim, and 30 meters of the Bachmann fired the Panzerfaust, knocking out one of the Shermans, bursting it into flames. Bachmann now withdrawed and jogs back to the two Panthers, waiting for their sting to set off. The engines quickly roared into the assembly of the Bachmann and the Panther commander. The Germans would charge hairless into the helms of fire of the Panthers that included covering each other in advance of the Panther 1. Then the Bachmann had running alongside the Armis pistol of the drove the left side of the Panther 2. The road has engaged the Americans first, distracted them. The Panther arrived on the junction, immediately engaged the Sherman and knocking it out first tank, and the several from behind. And now the Panther had fired. The several hectic minutes of battle, and suddenly there appeared to be a white American officer walk towards them. Bachmann stood with the Panther 1, offering to surrender himself, and 6 Shermans stood by, apparently undamaged. Bachmann agreed and told him to assemble his men into piles of weapons on the street. Bachmann was astonished when 60 American soldiers came out from the shattered buildings, and the pile of arms ordered of the Bachmann clambered down from his Panther, now covered in 60 Americans with his MP-40 machine gun pistol. Bachmann was even more surprised when the American officer directed him to 20 German soldiers who had been taken prisoner by the American earlier in the battle of the town. Of the courier that was close by Bachmann, there was found 6 further Sherman tanks, all undamaged, in the running order. Thinking fast, Bachmann ordered the American tank drivers to step forward. The next rearming liberated the German soldiers that was captured by the U.S. weapons, assigned the U.S. driver to the German guards. Each Sherman, taken by order, now goes to the headquarters, expecting a little gift of 12 intact Sherman tanks, fully refueled, and armed battalion also sent the trucks to take them out, with 48 American prisoners, and now all